This is the Authority Company Podcast, conversations with leaders that are designing our future. I'm Joe Pardavila, and today's guest is Damon Stafford, CEO of Alpine Intel and author of Believe in Better, the evolution of core principles that pioneered an industry. This is Damon's second time on the show, and I'm glad to have him back. He's built a reputation for transforming how leaders think about profitability, not as a short-term target, but a long-term discipline. His book challenges founders and executives to reframe profitability as a journey, grounded in principles that drive sustainable growth. Damon Stafford, welcome back to the podcast. How are you?
Hey, great, Joe. How are you?
I'm excellent. Thanks so much for carving out some time and joining me again on the pod. And the reason I want to get you on is because, after reading your book, chapter 8 about profitability was kind of really shook me. So I want to get into it and do a deep dive in it. But before we do, in case people missed our first chat, and people can go back and check it out on YouTube or on their favorite podcast platform, tell us about the idea for the book, Believe in Better, why you wrote it now, and who you hope reads it.
So I wrote the book, I guess a little over two years ago now. A lot of factors. One, I have a bit of a creative spirit, love to write. Also a big backlog of, ideas and kind of like fundamentals that created our success at Alpine, formerly known as CCG IQ, and what set out to really like create a timestamp. And actually the reality is it ends up being a little bit of a manual. The good news is it's the way we've lived for the last 12, 14 years, and to see it come together, and actually to be able to use it going forward has been a really cool thing to see. The fairy tales, I don't know if I have as much good feedback on those, but I sure had a good time writing them.
Good for you. That's awesome. Hey, listen, George R.R. Martin has that famous quote. He says, "Art is not a democracy." So this is your art. This is your opportunity to tell your story. So God bless you. Good for you. And it's funny, I want to zero in on profitability, and it is weird how profitability has always been the driver for most companies. But for a while, I feel like we kind of lost ourselves a little bit, Damon. It was always about growth. Famously, the great Netflix correction. You saw all these companies piles of money into streaming because Wall Street wanted to see growth. And I often joke, Damon, that Wall Street woke up one day and said, yeah, we don't care about growth. We care about profits. And then all of a sudden that all turned on its head. You saw all these people like Disney and Paramounts of the world change the way they were putting money into streaming and all their other technologies. So you write in chapter 8 about profitability makes you better. And you say profitability is a journey. What leading indicators tells you that you're drifting off that path before the P&L shows it? Because I think that's, going back to like the Netflix example, like no one saw the path. They just saw that their stock was going up. And then all of a sudden one day they said, oh yeah, no, that doesn't matter. And then it dropped. What's some of the indicators that say that you're drifting off that path of profitability?
When to your point about Wall Street, I think maybe, they may still not care as much as like the thing that a lot of folks think about at the end, right? But for us, we measure all of our operational processes, all of our KPIs, measure profitability at the transaction, whatever that transaction may be. We know ultimately, instantly if we're off path. But the basis for creating the product is around profitability of the individual transaction, as opposed to the other school of thought, which is kind of build it and then we'll try to figure out how to make it profitable, later. And so we know quickly now shared services and all of the, all the other support and everything that goes into creating, innovating, and leading the company is also another important factor. And, we also allocate that accordingly to the transaction, to the brand, to the vertical. And so we have a good idea. It doesn't always mean we're profitable in all lines, but that's kind of how we approach it.
Awesome. And, obviously if anyone speaks to you, reads the book, knows about how much importance you put into listening. So I was just curious, can you give a concrete example of where listening to your customer changed either your product or improved your margins? Or just something you could point out where you're like, oh, maybe you didn't think of it, but then someone, one of your clients was like, oh, maybe we should just, you're like, oh yes, that could help profitability.
Yes, we had, without giving specifics, we had an example not too long ago, specifics as in the customer name, but that we were essentially called to the mat along with other partners, vendors of the space for this very particular brand and service line. And the conversation was something along the lines of, I find it really odd that all of your competitors, include you in this space, are at this certain cycle time. And what they were really saying, it was kind of like a hostile moment for those that were in the meeting. But what they were really saying was, here's another path for you to essentially beat your competitors. And I'm telling you this path through a story and a bit of like mockery. And so the sales team was all fired up. I can't believe they would say that. And then the other folks in the meeting from our side were able to smoke it out because they were truly listening, not just hearing, listening. And it's created a big opportunity that has not only opened up a new vertical, a new service line, but at a much higher margin than the one that we were reporting on.
Nice. Love that. Great story. And Damon, you write about warning founders who sell to PE not to play investor. Can you dig into that a little bit for me?
This came up and just through experience, a lot of, we see it in our industry or companies that we've acquired, for whatever reason, founders can easily forget what got them there to that point of success, to where an investor would want to invest, and ladle that with maybe a bit of like an unknown and excitement of either the financial community or private equity or whatever it may be. And it's like I've seen people like turn into to other people. I sold my company, is the mentality, and it's now like I'm going to be like this group of investors because that's what people do when they sell their company. But the reason that the investors invested is because of whatever that spark is, or subject matter, or whatever it is the founder created. And it's usually not successful when founders try to be somebody that they're not. And maybe that's kind of what it comes down to. It doesn't mean you can't learn new things, and acquisitions are not a part of a growth strategy, because they certainly are for Alpine Intel. But it needs to be in combination with whatever skills, mentality that got you to that point of success, from my humble opinion.
And outside of the founder side, what are some of the M&A synergies that most often fail in real life? Is there one outside of just the founder not getting what their role is supposed to be? Is there anything else that stands out when it comes to those like M&A synergies?
Sure. I mean, acquiring just to acquire. There's there's the roll up strategy, which existed in it still exists today, but where you're taking many like companies, putting them together, finding expense synergies, and then operating, a shared services model that ultimately makes the greater entity more profitable. That 100% works, and clearly there's like a lot of use cases, but that doesn't apply to not only like every industry or every acquisition opportunity, but also, we're in the year 2025, and there may not be as many of those left. And if they are, they're huge.
Damon, it's weird too, because it's funny you said that about that we're in 2025. I know for the last couple of decades, I've always run into this with founders where they start a company to be acquired, which always to me is a weird mindset. It's like, why would like your end, like it's almost like that begin with the end in mind. Why would your end game be you selling this thing? Like to me, that like as a non-entrepreneur, and Damon, I often joke that I feel like entrepreneurs are like psychopaths. But like if you're going into it with the only way this is successful is if I could sell this company, what do you think about that mindset? Maybe I'm the wrong one here, but like sometimes I feel like that sets you up to fail if like your end game is just to sell your baby at the end of it.
I think there's a very, very low probability of success with that mindset.
Yeah.
I see it all the time too. When I created the company, selling was never in my mind, and took a long time to get there. And but it was never never created to sell. You can spend your energy on creating an incredible product that scales, that's profitable, dedicate your time to your leadership teams, your employees, and development, and all the things to make a sustainable company, and make an incredible company that everybody wants to buy, that is profitable. Or you can, you can lay out what you described. And I think that if you're making a bet on your time and your energy, resources on someone else's financial thesis that it's in the future, that's not even today, that could likely change, then you're operating kind of blind, right? It's truly like a bet. And as an entrepreneur and being surrounded by entrepreneurs, the last thing you want is like more uncertainty and more risk, because just getting the company off the ground is like is definitely a monumental task in its own.
Right.
And so yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, no, it is funny because again, I don't know if I'm right or wrong. To me, I just found it weird that it's almost like I don't know, like to create something to get rid of it always feels weird to hear out loud. And I understand. I'm like, I'm not poo-pooing, M&As. It's just that, as you know, sometimes the only way for you to grow is through an acquisition. So I get that. But like, if that's like the end game you're looking at, it's felt really odd to me. And you write about, like any business book, there's got to be shapes and sizes and graphs. You write about the profitability triangle. Tell me about the profitability triangle.
I believe in a comprehensive approach to the product, to the company. There's a lot of, and by the way, incredible success for people that just focus on tech or just focus on process. But for our niche and our industry, a combination is absolutely required for sustainability of the company and to serve your customers, your clients, in the way that they need to be served. And so, if you look at technology, process, uh, people, the combination of those, starting with incredible subject matter experts, people that understand not only the niche that they're operating in, but also, the industry and what the client, in our case, the carrier or other customer types, what they really desire, what creates a better outcome for them, what creates value for them. You start there and then apply process to make, sustainable, scalable, sorry to say it again, but business processes and, operational deliverables. And then you apply technology, the output is profit. But if you do just one of those, again, works in plenty of other industries. And there are plenty of like very obvious use cases where one of, not the others work, are necessary. But in our role, all three are required to create the profit that we drive.
That's great. And there's a line in the book that I found funny was that you argue that CEOs should understand transactions, which I find funny. It's like as someone who's not a CEO, be like, I sure hope CEOs understand transactions. Tell me more about that.
This came up Thursday of last week.
Okay.
Was on a demo for an internal like innovation, a new product build. This was like the right before we launched internally. This thing creates more efficiency, better product for our client. It's just a good thing overall. And I had the person that was leading this group call me after and say, I'm sorry, I've never had a CEO get like this into the transaction and ask questions about the database architecture and how processes work. And because I did have like, 20 questions in it, probably at least 10, 15 questions in an hour and a half. And I said, you know why? Because I care about our product. Like I'm a steward of Alpine Intel. I'm also represent our clients and our product. And I have to understand our product in order to truly, represent all of those different perspectives. And but it is very much you get into this like conflict of, are you truly delegating if you understand? Are you truly being strategic if you're in the weeds with the transaction? But from my perspective, the overall health of the business is a build up from the transactions. If we, it doesn't necessarily have to be like one transaction at a time, but look at a group of transactions under a certain cost model, right? The aggregate of those and the brands and the verticals, that is the health of the company. And I think maybe a lot of perspectives are that it should always be truly top down, and that it's a waste of time to truly be, in the weeds with the product. And I think those opinions are right if that's all you did. But that's obviously not the case here. So again, for us, like understanding the health of the transaction is crucial.
Now, what's the fine line there in terms of embracing that mindset about the CEO understanding the transaction, but then being the dreaded micromanager, asking too many questions, what is it, overstaying their welcome in that arena. How do you navigate that? Because I'm sure it's something that you've probably had to face yourself.
I think one of the golden rules is you can never be project manager, even if you know how to do it, right? Someone else must be responsible. I think another is, you obviously should never jump the organizational design that you have. And so as you're in it, and, if there's an hour and a half dedicated to that last week, there's probably for me like 6 hours in a month, in those type meetings. And so I think just overall time management and percentage of how much time you were driving yourself to be in those transactions. It's sort of like there's some hard and fast rules that I implemented kind of personally, like years ago. One of those is PowerPoint. I am not allowed to create a PowerPoint because I will spend hours to make sure that everything is completely perfect. And so once I implemented that rule, I became much more efficient. And same goes with approval. I don't care about the font; just make sure it's the same size. Applying those like systematic rules, same like methodology with diving too deep into the into the product or into the transactions.
Damon, I thought you and I were very much alike, but when you talk about your love of PowerPoint, I think that's a bridge too far for me. I think we've lost our personal connection there because I do not want anything to do with PowerPoints. So, and I know that has to do with your job as well.
Well, hey, to be clear, I don't want to be in Power. I didn't want to be in PowerPoint. It was a necessity until I realized, oh my gosh, there's plenty of people that can do this better than me.
That's funny. That's great. It's fun. It reminds me of it's sort of like, jumping over people. Like, I remember I worked at this radio station and we had a program director, but then we also had like a regional program director. And sometimes people at my base level at my radio station, if they didn't like the answer they got from the program director, they went over him to the regional program director. And then the regional program director would weigh in and sort of overrule what the program director. And to me, I always felt like this is like the worst way it basically emasculates the PD because all of a sudden they have no power. But sometimes that regional director does have to jump in, maybe in extreme cases. But if you do it too often, like sort of like your PowerPoint thing is like, if you do it too often, all of a sudden you're like, oh God, I'm a CEO doing PowerPoints. This is ridiculous. Yeah. How do you, I mean, again, I hate to be like thread the needle, but how do you thread the needle where you still want to be accessible to your team without over jumping, somebody that might be in between? Is that something you've ever had to run into?
Yeah, every day. Well, I mean, it's something you think, because if you're making yourself be involved because you do care about the product, then you've just exposed yourself to like hours of conversation potential. And it's not that you don't want to have the conversations, but there's not enough time in the day to do all. And I think that conflict that you described with the radio station is present everywhere. Creates incredible dysfunction, and again, like diminishes the authority of management, of the leaders, of whoever that person reported to. And so again, back to the org design, we live by the organizational design. Like I've said it too many times, right? In my past, which is we don't care about, I don't care about titles, I don't care about my title. Boy, have I made like an incredible shift the last 10 years. I do care about the title because your title matches your role and responsibility. And then that allows me to empower the organization, allows me to hold you accountable for success or failure. And so, I've kind of shifted back, to more structured from that perspective.
And speaking of shifting, one thing that I've noticed about you is you're always shifting the paradigm. You don't want to keep things settled. And you write about the customer is not always right, which the paradigm was the customer is always right. Tell me how you came to that realization and why it's important to sort of not it be your North Star, but to be always thinking that there's a chance, maybe good, maybe bad, that the customer is not right.
Yeah, wrote that in the book. It's something that is present, at every company and even within Alpine today. And the genesis behind kind of pausing before you say the customer is right is to really like think and understand the situation. Leading with "I'm sorry" can create, well, one a suboptimal outcome for whatever the client request was, and that understanding is really important as you look at like scale of like changes within the organization or operational deliverable model changes. Say a customer calls in and says, "I can't believe your report says this. It needs to say this." Even if I put objectivity aside, in a consulting model, well, what's the role of the person at the client? Do they have a manager? Are they asking because they don't want to deal with the conflict that may arise from having to deliver bad news to somebody? On and on and on and on again. And so as we dive into these issues, which are 10 times out of 10 opportunities to create something better or new. But as we jump into those, we lead first with, let's seek to understand what's happening here. And then maybe there's a sorry, but if it's a sorry, it's going to be a really big one and a really good one as we work through it. So
that's great. All right. So we talked about your team, we talked about your customers, but there's one person that sort of fits into this idea about profitability, and that's the CFO. As well as anybody, the importance of that role in terms of coming to profitability. When should a company think about having that? Because most startups and starting companies don't have a CFO unless maybe the one of the founders or one of the senior leaders has that kind of background. Most don't. So tell me about that first step in terms of finding the CFO that will lead you to that road to profitability.
It just occurred to me, thinking back to earlier in the podcast, you mentioned a lot of companies are built to sell, to get rid of. That might be a leading indicator. If they're founded with a CFO,
oh, that's funny.
they're probably built to sell. So first of all, our CFO is phenomenal and like absolutely crucial to everything that we do. The stepping stone or the point for us where the CFO is needed is very simple. Simply like we have investors, we have governance, you can a la carte it all you want, right? Tax, payroll, pick any function of a CFO, and in the beginning you can get it done or you can outsource. But as you bring in investors, and even before you bring in investors, if that's what you decide to do, absolutely crucial. I'm sure the investors would be happy to help you find one as well, if you don't. But for us, that was the mark. And then back to kind of working yourself out of the job as a founder. If you were even responsible for a lot of those, like the tactical parts of the world of accounting or of CFO, your time is better spent elsewhere. And I'm certain there's someone out there that knows how to do it better than you and more efficient. And so that's another good, I think, maybe milestone to consider is why am I, doing the PowerPoint? No, why am I running payroll, or why am I talking to the tax accountant?
Good stuff. Good stuff. You obviously a big systems guy. We know you're a big PowerPoint guy. But I know about creating these processes. What's the most useful profitability dashboard you've built? Like, give me sort of like the X's and O's of how you've put it together that works best for Alpine and probably could work for most companies.
Back to the aggregate. We built dashboards, reporting from even the very, very beginning that allow us to check the health of the transaction, to check the efficiency of a team member, the effectiveness of the call center. And so that's the crucial one. That's not probably the one that I view the most now. But as you roll that up to an overall company performance dashboard, that's obviously the basis for it. And so fast forward to today, we have a platform dashboard that allows us to see at the transaction. Sorry, CEO saying transaction. At the transactional level, new orders in by vertical, brand, client, year over year trending of that client. And again, I'm not in that dashboard, but then also the performance of the throughput, which of those transactions, which then leads to revenue. And so things like daily performance, monthly performance, weekly, yearly are things that we just don't think about because we can press a button and get it anytime we want. But every morning we wake up to all of those data points, and then it's very simple: what's in the green and what's in the red, but with incredible basis. And we talk a lot about the reporting and dashboards and all of the triggers and KPIs that we use. We could have a 12-hour podcast and you would be snoozing in no time.
Yeah. Well, we'll work in a PowerPoint section to that too, just in case people are missing that too. All right, so let's wrap this up with some takeaways, Damon, because what if someone read the book, listens to this podcast, watches on YouTube, and they are a near profitable business, and they call you up, Damon, and say, Damon, I got 90 days to turn this around. And I'm saying near profitable. I'm not saying this is a company that's in the toilet and they're about to file Chapter 11. I'm saying that they're just on that, they're on third base of profitability. Is there one or two hacks that you could suggest to those people to take to get started to that road to profitability?
I go back to transparency of the data within the operational platform or sales platform. I think a lot of decisions are based on emotion or the telephone game internally within the organization, and truly having an objective view based on the data that creates information on what's really happening in your business will give you clear guidance on where to spend your time and where to make improvements. So that's one. The downside of that is if you don't have it or have the ability to get to it, it's probably a lot longer than a 3-month journey. And we, as we have made acquisitions, we've been very close to those type situations in the past, and can be a real grind to get through, but it's always worth it every single time.
Awesome. His name is Damon Stafford. He's CEO of Alpine Intel and author of Believe in Better: The Evolution of Core Principles That Pioneered an Industry. Damon, thanks again for coming on the pod. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Always a pleasure. Take care.
And that's going to do it for this episode. If you want to find out more information about Damon and our other amazing authors, go to theauthoritycompany.com.